married to Jane Spencer, who was Diana's sister, who was the most practical and helpful of the three children, the three girls, and she's done an awful lot for Harry. I thought it was just terrible. He wasn't going to go there, but he has been there. They didn't talk to William. William didn't talk to him. Did he get any protection? Who knows? And if he didn't, if he takes the government to court yet again, they would say, well, look, we managed without that, but we don't know about that. But also the paper, the magazine that does loads for Harry and Meghan, they were the ones who said he wasn't going, so they said what he wanted them to say.
He doesn't need any protection. I mean, how did he get there? Probably in a Bombardier private jet that gives off 60 times more carbon than anybody else.
Yes, well, we don't know about that. The good thing was that he was there, and of course today is Remembrance Day for Diana, the day she died. So that he went there and he was with her side of the family, and I think that that's very good and might help him feel a bit better about things.
But neither of them are doing well out of it. William is not doing well out of it. Harry is not doing well out of it. The King is not doing well out of it. Meghan Markle's not doing well out of it. Why can't they just...
No, I don't think it's that easy. I think that they might do much worse if they were together again.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Wednesday, the 11th of September, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning to you. So, left out in the cold, the Tory motion to annul the government's cuts to winter fuel payments was defeated yesterday with 52 Labour abstentions and 1 rebel.
And the first US presidential debate last night saw Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in their face-off ahead of the election in November. Did you watch it?
UK economy is flatlined for the second month running. GDP figures have recorded no growth. Will Labour take responsibility, or will they blame their predecessors?
And a rescue package for Tata Steel. The government is working to finalise a £500 million plan for the Port Talbot plant in Wales after the closure of its blast furnaces on environmental grounds.
And missile into Russia. Britain's sources say that the American position on long-range missiles is shifting and they could allow Ukraine to use them within weeks.
And back, British Farming Day, quite right. Today's the day to support British food and farming, but what will this mean under Labour's first budget? Many farmers fear they may not survive planned changes to inheritance taxes.
And, of course, it's Wednesday, so time for PMQs as Starmer will take on Sunak in the Commons. We're going to be talking to Christopher Hope and Gloria Di Piero ahead of GB News PMQ show at 12. And hot off the press, literally finished cutting it a few seconds ago, which is why it wasn't in our menu. Christopher Hope has sat down with Rachel Reeves this morning, and we're going to hear what she had to say right at the top of the show.
Absolutely, because she is on the defensive big time over the taking away of the winter fuel allowance for 10 million pensioners, and on a lot of other grounds too.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about this morning. Want to hear from you as well, gbnews.com/your say. First, though, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the GB Newsroom. It's just after 9:30, and we'll start in the US, where Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have clashed on crime, immigration, abortion and the economy in their first and possibly only presidential debate. The showdown began with a handshake, but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked Trump's rallies, accusing him of boring his supporters. Trump, though, hit back, defending his popularity, and attacked Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies.
She's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
While Harris blamed Trump for nationwide abortion restrictions and the Capitol riot while questioning his fitness for office.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Here, no-fault evictions could soon be history as the government prepares to ban Section 21 evictions. The Renters' Rights Bill, set to be introduced today, promises sweeping changes to protect England's 11 million renters. It will also force private landlords to take faster action on unsafe housing conditions. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, says the bill will overhaul renting and tackle what she's called unfair practices. But landlords are warning the reforms must be fair to both sides. Labour is facing mounting pressure from within its own ranks this morning to reverse cuts to the winter fuel payment after 50 of its MPs abstained or were absent from yesterday's vote in the Commons. The policy, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment, has sparked backlash, with some MPs in the Labour Party warning they'll keep pushing for a U-turn. Charities and opposition parties say that the cut could leave older people choosing between heating and eating this winter. A mother who missed her son's court appearance to holiday in Ibiza will face a judge today. Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. He was in court for attacking a bus and vandalising a vape shop, crimes that were tied to unrest after a stabbing spree in Southport. The judge has described the mother's absence as astonishing and has summoned her to explain her actions. The government is set to unveil a multi-million-pound package to support Tata Steel's transition to greener production at its Port Talbot plant. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds will outline the details of that deal later. It's after the previous government, a Conservative government that is, had pledged £500 million towards the project. It comes as up to 2,800 jobs are expected to be cut as the company closes its last blast furnace. Unions are warning job losses will hit the Welsh economy and the local communities. And finally, British farmers are calling on the government to raise the agricultural budget to £5.6 billion a year to boost food security. As October's budget is looming, farmers say they're facing record inflation, low confidence and severe weather conditions, with acres of farmland now left underwater. Labour has blamed the previous Conservative government for underfunding and is promising to restore stability in the farming sector. Those are the latest headlines. A full roundup in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning, welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, just moments ago, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, she is the politician of the hour, isn't she, sat down with our very own GB News political editor, Chris Hope, to talk about many things. Let's have a listen.
Rachel Reeves, we'll come to the economy in a minute, but just about the vote yesterday in House of Commons on the winter fuel allowance. The fact is that 348 Labour MPs voted to make pensioners colder this winter. Is Labour now the nasty party?
Well, this government faced a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, but we were determined to protect the poorest pensioners, which is why pension credit and the winter fuel payment will continue to be paid to those pensioners who most need the support. But in addition to that, we committed to the triple lock in our manifesto, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And the triple lock means that this winter, the new state pension is worth £900 more than it was a year ago. And indeed, next April, it's likely to go up by a further £460. So despite these difficult decisions that we must take to get our public finances on a firmer footing after the £22 billion black hole left by the Conservatives, we are continuing to increase incomes of pensioners, and we are protecting the most vulnerable with the pension credit and the winter fuel payment.
But there are warnings, serious warnings for pensioners this winter who might freeze to death. You've got John Trickett saying it could be a matter of life and death, Richard Bergen saying these rate cuts will result in deaths of pensioners. Is that the trade-off you're making, economic growth for risking people's lives?
pensioners will have more money in their pockets this winter than they did last winter. The new state pension is worth £900 more than it was a year ago, and indeed average energy bills are £117 lower this winter than they were last winter. So we've looked at all the evidence. We're confident that pensioner incomes will continue to increase even after these changes. But when we faced a situation where the previous government were overspending by £22 billion, not some year in the future, but this financial year, we had to take action to bring stability back to the economy, because by bringing stability back to the economy, we can bring growth back to Britain, which means that we can improve living standards, reduce poverty, and have the money to fund our public services, including our National Health Service.
If I can ask about your expenses as an MP, £4,000 claimed to heat your second home. How can you feel the pain that others are feeling now from the withdrawal of this benefit?
I recognise that I earn more than average families in Britain, but I'm also determined in this position to protect the most vulnerable, which is why the winter fuel payment will continue to be paid to pensioners on pension credit. And indeed, unlike the previous government, we are working to ensure that everybody that's entitled to pension credit gets it. And already we've seen a 115% increase in the number of people applying for pension credit. That is good news and reflects the campaigns that we've been running to ensure that the poorest pensioners get all the support that they're entitled to.
But your heating bills are being picked up by the taxpayer in your second home. How is that fair to pensioners really worried this winter about it being too cold?
Well, being a constituency MP means that you have to have a house in London, as well as, of course, living in the constituency. And that's the same for all MPs. Those are long-standing rules. I am determined to ensure that the poorest pensioners are protected and will still get winter fuel payments, and indeed to ensure that pensioner incomes continue to increase with the triple lock. 800,000
pensioners haven't signed up for the pension credit yet. If they all sign up, well, won't it wipe out the saving, the £1.5 billion you're saving by axing the fuel allowance in the first place?
I would prefer the poorest pensioners to get the support that they're entitled to, rather than...
Even if that happens?
I would rather pay money to the poorest pensioners than to continue with a universal winter fuel payment, which meant that some people who didn't need the money were getting it and weren't using it to pay their energy bills. Now, many people in that situation were already giving that money to charity, whether it's to food banks or to other good causes, because they recognise that they really shouldn't when the public finances are in the state they're in, and when, for some people, they are living day to day and relying on food banks, that it can't be justified that you continue to pay winter fuel payment to people regardless of what their incomes are.
The economy is flatlining, and you talked about difficult decisions coming up. What will they be? Will you cut back on bus passes? Is the difficult economic picture mean that the October 30th budget will be worse than we expect?
But we've committed to those bus passes, to the free TV licences for those entitled, and free prescriptions. But we've also committed to the triple lock, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And that means that pensions will continue to rise by whichever is higher, 2.5% inflation or average earnings. And that means that pensioners have £900 more this winter, and likely another £460 from next April.
Just very finally, on the prisons release yesterday, how do you feel watching prisoners cracking open champagne being released on Labour's watch? It's a sickening
It makes me really angry. It makes me really angry, the inheritance that the previous government left, whether it's the £22 billion black hole in the public finances or failing to build the prison places that are necessary to keep criminals locked up. We will make sure that those prison places are available. But we've had to make the tough decisions to clear up the awful mess that the previous government left for its successor.
And when will it get better for our viewers? When are they going to start feeling positive about the future? Because it's all such grim news at the moment.
Well, today I'm making an announcement of an £8 billion investment in Britain in data centres to power the digital economy of the future. And I'm here at a university technical college today training up young people to work in those industries. I know that if we can bring stability back to the economy, if we partner with business, then we can turn round our economy and make Britain better off, and that is what I'm absolutely determined to do.
Next year?
Look, we are making the decisions now to turn around our economy. An £8 billion investment today in the jobs and industries of the future to make working people better off.
Rachel Reeves, thank you for joining us today on GB News. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Chris Hope talking to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, only this morning, just about an hour or so ago. She's very robotic, isn't she? She's sticking to the script. There's very little emotion. It's all about... She talks about £22 billion black hole, trotting out the lines about the triple lock on the pension. I mean, come on. I wanted to just go, take a breath.
I mean, she's also...
And be real.
They've got to be careful how these things sound. I appreciate I earn more than most pensioners. Hang on, Chancellor, you earn £160,000 a year and your husband is an incredibly senior civil servant who's probably on £120,000, £130,000 a year. Well, add that up.
Yeah. And
that's 300,000 between them. They are rich.
They are rich.
And they are talking about pensioners who are on £11,000, £12,000, £13,000 who are going to be denied £300 a year. And she can witter on about the pension credit, 243 questions to answer, which will be too much for some pensioners. Some pensioners won't go online, and some pensioners will be too proud to claim it.
Well, this is the thing. When Chris said then about the fact that there are 800,000 people who could claim that pension credit who haven't done so far, he makes a really good point that if they all do sign up, guess what? They're going to remove any of the benefit that you might get from the tax coffers because you're paying that. So what's the point? Yeah. And also, the fact that she's so proud of, this Labour government is so proud of the fact that there's been a 115% increase in people who are claiming pension credit. Well done. More people claiming benefits. More elderly people who obviously before now didn't feel that they needed to claim that benefit. And the pride as well of that generation of not claiming money off the state. Some of them will have never claimed a penny off the state in their life.
I spoke to the head of the General Secretary of the National Pensioners Convention yesterday. I interviewed her for GB News, went out yesterday afternoon. Lifelong Labour voter said, quote unquote, I'm in shock that this is that a Labour government is doing this. In shock.
Yeah. Well, let us know your thoughts this morning. Get involved in our conversation. gbnews.com/your say.
So up next, who won? Trump versus Kamala Harris. They took to the stage last night. It's the first time not only they debated with each other, the first time they even ever met.
Yeah, we'll tell you what we think in just a moment. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time, did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
9:48, Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So overnight in the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris went head-to-head in their first presidential debate.
Let's have a look at some of the best moments.
She has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country.
I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy.
These dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Oh, dear. I mean, that's the bit that's probably going to endure most, that he accuses migrants of eating people's pet cats and dogs.
We've got political presentation coach Graham Davis with us. I think Andrew's a little lost in
I've known Graham for so long. But, I mean, Graham, that will be the carrier. But what was you saw it from beginning to end. You watched it live, unlike Bev and I. She won, didn't she, Harris?
Oh, she did. But the biggest loser last night was the chairman of the Ohio Tourist Board, because now the word's out that there is a huge epidemic of immigrants eating everyone's domestic pets. I don't think they can expect many visitors.
Gosh.
Although I have to say, in his defence, of course this is what was going to happen. There are social media posts this morning and the posts that he obviously saw beforehand of the police arriving at a house where an immigrant has eaten a cat. The accusation being that the adjudicators were fact-checking Donald Trump throughout it and telling him he was wrong. They weren't fact-checking Kamala Harris in the same way. And also, just to be clear, one arrest of a woman eating a cat does not mean that there are thousands of immigrants eating pets.
Indeed. Well, of course, Trump sometimes has a fairly loose relationship with the exact truth. And clearly he likes being stoked up by a media post and exaggerating it. And yes, there did seem to be a tendency for the fact-checkers mainly to be checking Donald Trump. But again, in fairness, he's got more previous convictions for possibly distorting the truth than perhaps Harris has.
I disagree. I would defend him on that. I think she's full of nonsense. I mean, what I think she did really well on the debate last night, though, Graham, is she laughed at him. And what a thin-skinned man like Donald Trump does not like is a woman laughing at him. And that was very powerful. It undermined him, didn't it?
Well, it did, except that occasionally Kamala slightly overdid it. One of the things that I suspect that her team were coaching her not to do was not to gurn too much, not to laugh too much, not to giggle, not to do the strange twitches.
Yeah.
Yes, she managed to ridicule him, but that's a card you mustn't play too hard. It was a remarkable change from a left jab to a thermonuclear assault, which she did, when she decided to make fun of the size of his rallies. And his rallies in general. And they knew that was going to be getting their skin.
Why rise to the debate on that? I do the big... Why would you rise to the debate on that? I had more than Martin Luther King. I had more than JFK. It's macho kissing over the worst sort.
Of course, his handlers would have been giving him advice for the last 2 or 3 weeks, which he's, to be fair, for the first 10 or 15 minutes, he just about abided by, which would be something like... just stick to answering the question, stick to policy, don't look at her. And he managed to do that. But her assault, the Moggy and Doggy massacre, certainly got under his skin, as they calculated it would.
What was interesting when they first walked onto the stage was they've never met before. She took the initiative and she walked towards him onto his side and she put her hand out and shook his hand. And I thought that was a class act because he wasn't going to, was it? He was happy to just stand at the lectern and maybe wave a little.
Well, it could be interpreted as nice classiness, but also it was deliciously, calculatedly combative as well, because she could be seen in front of tens of millions of people deliberately invading Donald Trump's space.
Yeah.
And that made her feel good as taking the initiative right from the start.
Tight on time. It's in her interest for there to be no more debates, because if she did win that, why would you risk losing the next one?
It was a clear and palpable win, and I don't think she could get as good a result the next time. She delivered her pre-prepared lines almost as though she believed in them, and she did it well, but people will see through it the second time.
OK, Graham, great to see you. Graham Davis there. Still to come, the latest GDP figures announced. What can be done to resuscitate the British economy? Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. A cold wind for many of us through today. Blustery showers across northwestern areas and a chance of frost overnight tonight. So quite a cold theme to come through the next few days. We've got Arctic air brought in by this northerly wind. The wind's going to be particularly strong across northern areas of Scotland. The strongest winds, though, have moved away overnight. We will see frequent showers, particularly across northwestern areas of England, northern Scotland, where we could see some snow showers over parts of the Grampians as well. And the strength of the breeze will make it feel colder than it is. So highs of around 12 or 13 degrees in the north, 15 or 16 in the south, but feeling closer to single figures exposed to that breeze. Showers will continue into this evening as well, particularly across northern areas of Scotland. They'll really rattle through and bring a risk of hail and possibly some thunder and lightning for some of us. And as well as across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, and after a pretty dry start to the day across eastern areas, we could see some showers across these areas into this evening as well. But it does look that much drier across more southern areas of England. But that will lead to clear skies quite widely overnight tonight. Still a few showers pushing in across parts of Wales, northern areas of Scotland in particular. But where we see the clearest skies and some slightly more sheltered valleys, we could see a touch of air or grass frost by Thursday morning. But widely, temperatures will be down in single figures. So certainly another chilly start to the day on Thursday morning. Probably a slightly colder start tomorrow compared to today. And this northerly wind will continue to bring showers in through Thursday, but there will be more in the way of sunshine to start the day, particularly across many eastern and southern areas of the UK. Cloud will thicken as the day goes on, and a few showers will continue to develop, particularly across parts of Wales, northern areas of Scotland. It will be a somewhat drier day for northwestern England, but again, another chilly one with temperatures well below average for the time of year. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Ayrshire, the A77 is closed each way north of Cairn Ryan after a vehicle caught fire. In Fermanagh, the A32 is closed each way along Forthill Street in Enniskillen because of a fire. The A1 in West Yorkshire is blocked southbound by an accident between Darrington and Wentbridge, causing queues. Train services are suspended between Southport and Wigan Wallgate because of a points failure. And the M6 in the West Midlands has a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 6 towards Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham. It's taking around half an hour in queues from junction 4A. For the M42. In Norfolk, the A47 is partly blocked by an accident between Halvergate and Acle, causing delays each way between Norwich and Great Yarmouth. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, 2 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 12 and 13 towards Bedford, causing queues. On the M4 in Swansea, the eastbound exit at junction 45 at Unnersvorgan is closed after an accident causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 11th of September. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Left out in the cold, the Tory motion to annul the government's cut to winter fuel payments was defeated yesterday with 52 Labour abstentions and 1 rebel.
The first US presidential debate last night saw Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in their first face-off ahead of the election in November.
And the UK economy is flatlined for the second month running. GDP figures recording no growth. Are Labour going to take responsibility, or will they blame the Tories?
And Tata Steel rescue package. The government is working to finalise a £500 million plan for the Port Talbot plant after the closure of its blast furnaces.
Missile into Russia. British sources say the American position on long-range missiles is shifting and they could allow Ukraine to use them within weeks. That'll be British missiles too.
How ridiculous, honestly. And back British Farming Day. Today's the annual day to support British food and farming. But what will this mean under Labour's first budget, as many farmers fear they might not survive changes to inheritance tax?
And of course it's Wednesday, so time for PMQs. Starmer will take on Sunak in the Commons. We'll be chatting to Christopher Hope and Gloria De Piero ahead of those PMQs at 12. And of course that GB News interview, Rachel Reeves, interviewed by Chris Hope, sticking to her guns. The winter fuel allowance, no compromise, no reforms, no tapering of the benefits. And of course we now know that she claimed £4,000 in fuel allowances for her second home in London. Very nice.
She also didn't confirm, well, she did say, you know, that Chris asked about bus passes and TV licence supplementation. Yeah. I think it was TV licence. And basically how else they might hit the elderly. And she was a little bit mealy-mouthed on it. She wasn't particularly committal about the fact they're going to keep those things in place. Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbnews.com/your say. First, though, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. 2 minutes past 10 and the top story this morning. We'll start with the breaking line coming to us from Ukraine. David Lammy and Antony Blinken have just arrived in the country, calling it a critical moment in the war with Russia. The Foreign Secretary and the US Secretary of State are set to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky and discuss Kyiv's needs in its fight against Moscow. Well, their joint visit follows reports that Joe Biden is expected to lift a ban on British Storm Shadow missiles being used on Russian territory. That's after Iran was confirmed to have supplied ballistic missiles to Russia. And just the latest line as well coming to us from the Reuters news agency. We're hearing that the UK has in the last few minutes, in fact, sanctioned 10 vessels operating as part of Putin's so-called shadow fleet in the latest international crackdown on Russia. David Lammy says that that move blocks Russia's ability to trade in oil and sends a clear message to Moscow. The fleet is accused of using illicit methods to keep Russian oil flowing despite global sanctions. So that latest line just into us that the UK has sanctioned 10 vessels operating as part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet. Turning to the US now, and Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have clashed on crime, immigration, abortion and the economy in their first and possibly only presidential debate. The showdown began last night with a handshake, but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked rallies that Trump held, accusing him of boring his crowds. Trump, though, hit back, defending his popularity and attacking Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies.
She's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Well, later in the night, Harris blamed Trump for nationwide abortion restrictions and the Capitol riot, while questioning his fitness for office.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Here, no-fault evictions could soon be history as the UK government prepares to ban Section 21 evictions. The Renters' Rights Bill, set to be introduced today, is promising sweeping changes to protect England's 11 million renters. It will also force private landlords to take faster action on unsafe housing conditions and ends blanket bans on tenants who receive benefits or have children. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, says the bill will overhaul renting and tackle what she calls unfair practices. But landlords are warning the reforms must be fair to both sides. Labour is mounting pressure from within its own ranks this morning to reverse cuts on the winter fuel payment after 50 of its MPs abstained or were absent from yesterday's Commons vote. The policy, which will see 10 million pensioners lose that payment, has sparked backlash, with some Labour MPs warning they'll keep pushing for a U-turn. Charities and opposition parties say the cut could leave older people choosing between heating and eating this winter. Well, despite the opposition, the government insists the cuts are necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall. A mother who missed her son's court appearance to holiday in Ibiza will face a judge today. Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. He was in court for attacking a bus and for vandalising a vape shop, crimes tied to unrest after a stabbing spree in Southport. Judge Joanna Hurst, who described the mother's absence as astonishing, has summoned her to explain her actions. The government is set to unveil a multi-million-pound package to support Tata Steel's transition to greener production at its Port Talbot plant. Up to 2,800 jobs are expected to be cut as the company closes its last blast furnace. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds will outline the details of the deal later, after the previous Conservative government had already pledged £500 million towards that project. It comes as unions are warning the job losses will hit the Welsh economy and local community. British farmers are calling on the government to raise agricultural budgets to £5.6 billion a year to boost food security. The National Farmers Union is urging ministers to increase funding, saying it's crucial for sustainable food production and for tackling climate challenges. Well, as October's budget looms, farmers say they're facing record inflation, low confidence and severe weather conditions, with acres of farmland now left underwater. Labour has blamed the previous Conservative government for underfunding and is promising to restore stability in the farming sector. And finally, Heathrow Airport set a new monthly record in August, with nearly 8 million passengers passing through its terminals. The transport hub also saw its busiest day on record, serving 269,000 people on the 18th of August. Heathrow is now on track to welcome some 30 million passengers this summer. That's the highest ever for that period. And Manchester and Stansted airports have also hit record numbers, contributing to a record-breaking season. Those are the latest headlines for now. Your next update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
So the Tory motion to annul the government's cuts to winter fuel was defeated with 52 Labour abstentions and 1 rebel.
And we've got a book. You can see we're reading books. So that's our guest coming up in a minute. But we just want to talk first of all about this yesterday. These, I have to say, Andrew, I'm so irritated by these MPs that abstained. Because it just shows a complete lack of backbone, doesn't it?
Well,
or do they have no choice?
No, of course they can choose. They can vote against. They may get the whip taken off them, which means they'd be suspended from the parliamentary party for 6 months. If it's an issue they really care about, they could have voted against it. One did yesterday. He's a Corbynite, admittedly.
Yeah. He's my new hero, John Tickier, is it? John.
Yeah, but it's when the official Labour minister doing the ministerial says, oh, but about 10 or 11 had official reasons to be absent from Parliament. It's a lie. That's what it is. It's a lie. They were given created excuses to be absent from the scene of
Someone was at the dentist.
Yeah, they're at dentists. A lot of them had dental appointments yesterday.
If there are 50 of them that felt strongly enough that it wasn't the right thing to vote on, that they abstained, if those 50 had all voted against it, he's not going to take the whip away from 50 of them, is he?
Of course not.
So why they all? I hate this sort of for me.
And I was at the TUC
selfish
conference yesterday. I didn't find a trade union official with nothing other than contempt for it, which is why he had such a lukewarm reception. Now, official figures this morning show that the economy recorded no growth in July for the second month running.
That's despite hopes that things might have been picking up. It doesn't appear to be the case.
First figure since the Labour government came to office. Obviously, they're blaming their predecessors. Well, is there a different way of doing things? We're going to talk now to Lord Moynihan, John Moynihan, who has written
a very weighty tome.
It is a weighty tome. Return to growth, how to fix the economy. First of all, John, we can call you by your first name. You're not an economist, but you've been an incredibly successful businessman. And some say you're a billionaire. I don't know if that's true or not. But it is.
I can rebut that point.
Okay.
Would that I were.
But what your point is, successive governments of every political stripe have got it wrong. Productivity in this country is hopeless. Growth has been hopeless.
Correct. I think one of the interesting points about today's figures is when you dive down into them and you see what it is that is causing the lack of growth. You can... the majority of what we do in this country is services, so-called, but you've also got manufacturing, goods. And, in fact, services increased, the GDP of services increased, but the GDP of goods went down. We're destroying our manufacturing base. And that's mostly due to the absurd regulations that we pile up and pile up. It's also due to the very high energy cost that causes businesses to get out of the UK and go off to places like China, where they create electricity out of coal-fired generation stations. So that creates a lot of carbon in the air. So our green laws that are designed to get less carbon in the air drive businesses out of this country over to China, where they put carbon in the air. So that was brilliant, but also it is destroying our manufacturing base.
Well, we're seeing today the government are talking about Tata Steel import tool, but potentially a £500 million bailout because they've changed the furnaces they use on environmental grounds.
Yes.
This is another example, isn't it?
Yes, you can go on giving subsidies to this or that bit of the economy. You can't subsidise the whole economy. You can only have a good economy by doing the right things in the first place. And you can bung a bit of, 500 million, whatever, to this or that company. But you can't bung that to all companies. So bit by bit, our manufacturing base is shrinking very rapidly. Our services, which are harder to regulate and therefore can get on with it without government interference, they're doing a little bit better and that economy is growing. But there's another angle that they don't think about. If you look at the private sector GNP versus the public sector GNP. Now, the whole GNP is both of them added together. They're growing government month after month, year after year, so the GNP sort of stays stable, while the private sector GNP, the thing that actually creates wealth and creates the money to provide all these services that we're talking about, that's going down, while the public sector GNP, the size of government, is going up and up. So you've got size of government, massive regulation, too much tax, everybody's leaving the country.
And the small state, which we used to be part of the Tory party philosophy, has gone by the board because
it seems to have. Yes.
The public sector has expanded dramatically.
It has. And I think that's because, from what you can see, it's not the political parties that decide the laws or the way the economy goes. It's actually the public sector and the civil service who are running things. So sitting in the Lords, I see the same laws being pushed through by Labour that were being pushed through by Rishi Sunak's government. The identical law. And the way I've discovered that it works is that you've got a minister who's saying, oh, I've got a new department, this is very exciting, what am I going to do? Well, minister, we've got just the law for you, and you can put your name to it. You know, we're going to ban smoking in anywhere, and you'll be known as the person, minister, who banned smoking forever, and you'll be famous throughout the generations. Oh, that's good, I'll do that, you know, my law. Well, they give that to a Conservative, they push it through. Rishi Sunak idiotically holds a general election, and now you've got a Labour lot, and new Labour. Well, what am I going to do? Oh, ban smoking, minister. You'll have your name on it. Oh, yes, will I? And law after law we're seeing. Same law being run by civil servants, not really by the government.
Were people watching this at home, John, all they know at the moment is that life is expensive for
Correct.
them. Inflation has pushed
Correct.
prices up. I think it's been price gouging.
Hugely.
Shops as well have taken advantage of people's perceptions maybe that things were going to be expensive. So guess what? Everything's a couple of 50p more or a pound more here and there. When can people at home, when might we see a change to how expensive life feels and how affordable everything is?
Well, this book's called Return to Growth. And so, but all the political parties said, oh, we're the party for growth. Keir Starmer said, I'm going to focus laser-like on growth going forward. Inflation. Everybody says, oh, we're going to solve inflation. None of the parties have come up with a definition of what creates economic growth. None of the parties came up with an understanding of what causes inflation. Very difficult for the Conservatives to do that because the inflation happened under their watch. And the reason you have inflation is because you put too much money into the economy. It's been shown over and over again. That's what causes inflation, too much money in the economy. Why do we have too much money in the economy? Furlough.
Yeah.
I was very pro-furlough for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
We were all scared. We didn't know what was happening. People stayed at home. They needed to be supported. The economy needed to get up. Within 2 or 3 months, we knew that COVID really wasn't as bad as we thought. And we could have all said, right, fine, let's do what Sweden's doing. Let's go back to work. We didn't. We kept furlough on for 18 months. It put tens of billions of pounds into the economy, which inevitably 18 months later led to inflation.
How did they not know that was going to happen? Because it was obvious to the layperson like me that that was going to happen. How did they not see that?
Well, there's a long history of what's called monetarism in the study of economics, and it's got a checkered history. People had said there'd be inflation back in 2013, but in fact they'd done other things to keep the money supply down back then, which they didn't do this time. So the people who said there'll be inflation back in 2013 were sort of a bit quiet. I was a bit quiet.
Is this all a Ponzi scheme? Is it all just going to collapse at some point?
Oh, yeah, it just gets worse and worse. You're on a hiding to nothing if you're growing the state, shrinking the part of the state that actually creates wealth, creates jobs, creates the money for taxes to pay for all these services. If you're doing that, it ends, and that's what this is about. It says we've got to return to a smaller state.
Yeah.
You've got to cut taxes because, like it or not, you may hate all these billionaires, of which I'm not one by any means. You may hate them all, but they're all leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, my hairdresser, just an ordinary chap, says, I've got 4 customers. He's a West End hairdresser, so he has good customer base. 2 of them billionaires, 2 of them centimillionaires. They've all left the country in the last 3 months. And I know personally lots of people leaving this country.
And how does that help growth? Because that's
exactly. And they're not just rich people, they're young people with aspiration.
Yeah.
The really smart people, the high flyers, they're all saying, forget about this, I'm off. I'm going to go to Australia. I'm going to go to Dubai or America or whatever.
Well, John, I think our viewers will love this book, and I think they probably love what you've said today.
And also, you can do a great quiz about all the very interesting illustrations on the front, because there's a particularly unflattering picture of Chris Patten, and quite right, it's unflattering. He was allegedly a Tory. He was allegedly Tory party chairman.
It's-
And he was also a terrible chairman of the BBC.
It's Return to Growth, How to Fix the Economy by Lord John Moynihan. It's very big. I'm going to read it, John. Thank you.
I'm halfway through.
Right, up next, we're going to be going through the papers with the panel, Stephen Pound and Mike Parry. What do you make of Taylor Swift backing Kamala Harris? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry has got in touch with a lot of people surrounding the royals about a possible return, some sort of easing himself back into what goes on in this country, and tries to repair his image. This has been reported today in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, the major move is being branded as Operation Bring Harry In from the Cold, as he's allegedly growing dissatisfied with advice from American-based image experts.
Let's now speak to Jack Stooks. Now, Jack is a former gardener, senior gardener, top man at Highgrove there. And did you know Harry, Jack?
Yes, yeah, I did. The Harry I knew was always amazing, really good, lovely to be around. I think everybody wanted to be around him, really. He was the sort of life and soul of what we've got to remember is at the time, we knew a book was coming out. We knew various things might come from that. We knew that there was problems with Meghan's family, and there was a lot going on at the time. I think things have, sort of been brushed aside to an extent. Whether or not the book was a mistake, I mean, he might think it was a mistake. He might not think it was a mistake. What we tend to do is we judge him on just the fact that he wrote the book. What we don't think is, why did he write the book? We don't ask the questions as to there was a reason behind him having to have his story known. And maybe, he needed that. Maybe he felt he just needed people to know his side of the story. Hopefully, that family can forgive. I mean, not forget, but be able to sort of move on in a different way.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Very good morning, 10:22. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. You're on the telly, Andrew Pierce, with Andrew and me, Bev Turner. Stephen Pound. The two Mr. P's are here. Pound and Parry are in the studio with us. Should we talk about the American debate? You watched it live?
You got up to watch.
Yeah, I did, because I thought, if you want to really absorb... Sometimes the clips don't show you what the best bits are all about, the nuances, the body language and all that kind of stuff. And I have to say, the longer it went on, the more I was starting to worry that Kamala Harris might be the next president of the United States of America, because she grew into it. And also, you know, in this age of doom, when we've got Keir Starmer going around telling us that everything is terrible, you know, we're all doomed to a terrible future, she is the one world politician who seems to have a bit of confidence about the future, even if we don't really know what it is. But she smiled and she laughed, and on the old "they eat cats and dogs" in Ohio, right, the way she dismissed it with just a shake of the head and a laugh and a kind of, is this guy bonkers, I thought that did Trump in.
It also shows, doesn't it, Stephen, what a good selection she was, because she is like kryptonite to Donald Trump. She brings out the worst in him. He loses all of his discipline. Against Biden, he could do quite well.
Well, of course, the great thing about Kamala Harris is she's a woman, and he simply can't cope with it. A lot of us are actually quite dubious about whether she'd make a good candidate. I think, as Mike says, she's actually grown into it. But if you have a look, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about the totality of it. You know, everybody thinks, well, people of my age, and I think I'm probably the oldest person, certainly in this room, if not in London.
Well, you're certainly the oldest person in this room by quite a long way.
Absolutely.
Sorry, can we stop being so ageist? Anyway,
raised it.
But you remember the Kennedy-Nixon one, where Kennedy...
Well, I don't remember, actually.
Well, no,
I have
OK.
read about
Well, I was around in '59.
Yeah, I saw that. The perspiring lip.
And, of course, Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle.
He won it on the radio, Nixon, but on TV...
That's right,
Still an immediate, sweaty...
And then Dan Quayle tried to talk about, you know, JFK, and he said, I knew Jack Kennedy. You know.
And you are no Jack Kennedy.
That's very good. But look, I think that what's fascinating about this is Kamala Harris has been locked away in a hotel room for about 3 days, and she's actually set up a stage. She actually built a stage.
That's right. To replicate the one.
She had somebody. I mean, I don't know who playing Donald Trump.
He was an actor.
Yeah, I know, with a fat suit, with an Ian McKellen fat suit on.
An orange wig.
Oh, no.
An orange wig.
It's Krusty the Clown. But the interesting thing is, Donald Trump decided, no, I'm just going to go back to Mar-a-Lago, and I'm going to, you know, he's not going to prepare for it, because he absolutely thought that he could ace it. And I think pride certainly comes before a fall.
And Mike, you were watching it. From what I understand, the first 15 minutes, he was OK. He was on message. He was disciplined. But she got under it. The moment she started to get under his skin, he lost it.
She was like a heavyweight boxer for the first 15 minutes, waiting to see what sort of mood he was in, where he was going to attack and all that. And when she realised he's not the campaigner he was 4 years ago, and he's clearly not able to do it as he could, she then came into her own. And just getting back to the cats and dogs, it's so ridiculous. It could be proved that what he said is true, but it's one isolated incident. How many times have you read a scare story in this country? Immigrants have started to eat the Queen's swans, right? You know, somebody's found somebody kidnapping a swan. It's one isolated incident, and he tries to make an issue of it, which is unreal.
But what he should have done was make an issue of the fact of her woeful failure to deal with illegal migration.
Of course.
Pouring across the Mexican border. Biden put her in charge of it to finish her off.
And she never visited.
And she never visited. She didn't do a job. Instead, he gets sidetracked by some nonsense about a cat.
Absolutely. The closest she went on the immigration issue was to Guatemala, right? What did she go to Guatemala for? Man asked, did you go to the border? And she said, no, but I haven't been to Europe. I mean, completely out of her depth on a massive, major issue.
He missed a great opportunity.
The heavyweight box. You remember Muhammad Ali with the rope of dope?
Yes.
You know, the idea he had to let him come to him,
Absolutely.
And then suddenly, after about 2 or 3 rounds,
bang!
I don't actually think the debate will make much difference at all to people in America and how they're going to vote, though. They either love or hate Trump, and they love or hate Kamala Harris. This entrenchment of views is enormous. But I do think that wavering Democratic voter...
It'll energise them.
In a way,
and it'll bring money in.
In a way, she wasn't really competing against Trump in that debate. She was competing against Biden. And people who would have said, I can't vote for Biden. Actually, I quite like her. I will vote for her. That's who she'll get over the line.
As soon as the debate was over, they said, Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris.
That's right. Absolutely.
You've got Mike Perry and Taylor Swift.
Absolutely.
And she is a worldwide phenomenon, isn't she?
Who? Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
And Elon Musk has now piled in and attacked her, which made it even worse.
I totally agree. I mean, the greatest lobby that politicians want to grab and own in the world are the Gen Zs, aren't they? Because, generally speaking, they're apolitical. So if you can make them political, you've got a huge lobby there voting for
The only
you.
thing is that Taylor Swift fans are mostly about 12 years old, so whether they can persuade their parents...
Yeah, but they've got... Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They've got parents. Oh, Daddy, you know...
Tell me something very important before we move on. Well, I'm trying to work out what on earth we describe the colour of your dress, but it matches your glasses.
It's turquoise.
We are not worthy.
That's not important. It matches your eyes.
Would you have said that if I was wearing a pair of glasses which matched my tie?
If you were wearing a dress like that,
No, that is old-fashioned sexism from the Labour Party.
No, I don't mind. I'm impossible to offend, Stephen. You know that. Right, 50 Labour MPs defied Starmer yesterday, refusing to back this winter fuel cut. One of them, I was just looking, is Rebecca Long-Bailey. She's the MP for Salford, where there are lots of pensioners on the poverty line there.
Well, of course, she ran for the leadership against Starmer.
She
Good
did.
point, I've forgotten that.
She did.
And she's put a tweet out saying, I couldn't support this yesterday for my constituents. She didn't vote against it, Mike.
No.
Only this one guy, John, did.
John Trickett. It's utterly pathetic, honestly. And also, if you look at the actual facts here, the sheer hypocrisy, 162 Labour MPs claimed £425,000 on expenses for energy in their second homes since 2019. Not their first home, their second home.
The chance of the Exchequer claiming more than £4,000.
4,000...
You can't claim it for your own home.
Yeah.
If the chance of the Exchequer, she's got a constituency up in Leeds. She has to have a flat in London.
Yes.
It's reasonable that she can claim that. Why should she have to
stay in a hotel room?
Yeah.
She could stay in a hotel
No,
room.
I don't mind her.
Would it?
Of course it would. Yeah.
I don't mind her claiming it for her second home because she's she's doing her duty for the state and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, to say I need to keep warm in Leeds, but other people in Leeds who are over the age of 65 don't need to stay warm, so they can get cold. And as Andrew pointed out here in his story on Monday morning, 4,000 pensioners could die from this measure, and that's according to Labour Party research.
That really is Shroud Baby. Look, come on. We all know the answer to this is why on earth should the King get the same money?
What is Shroud Baby?
That's right, 4,000 pensioners.
That was Labour Party research.
No, it wasn't. It was Jeremy Corbyn.
No, it was Labour Party research trotted out by Labour shadow cabinet ministers, who included
Jeremy Corbyn,
Keir Starmer.
Yeah,
Keir Starmer, who's now the Labour leader.
Keir Starmer ticked
If
it
it
off.
was true in 2017,
Right.
why is it not true now?
Curse him for his loyalty, if you will. But the fact remains is that figure of 4,000 is a very, very hypothetical figure. And if you honestly think 4,000 pensioners are going to die freezing in their gap...
Well, Labour said they are going to from their research. I've read it. I read it.
Could.
For a politician, Stephen, you're getting very sort of precise, aren't you, about the coulds and the woulds?
You're verging on hypothermia. Verging on hypothermia as an old person this week. You're like, well, I could die now, or maybe
I suppose they could wear an overcoat in bed, Steve.
That's right, yeah.
A bobble hat.
Yeah, you're right, Bev. I was lucky I only got pneumonia.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I think that's going back to...
But Stephen, just explain to us. We saw the Minister Pennycook saying, oh, no, all but about 11 of those 52 abstained were given permission to be absent from the parliamentary state. Why do they insult our intelligence?
Exactly.
It's just a lie.
Yes.
They abstained and they've made an excuse. Well, say you've got a constituency business. Say you've got a dental appointment.
Political chicanery.
Matthew Pennycook is one of those honest politicians you'll ever meet, and I'm sure he'll learn how to lie at some stage, but he can't at the moment. Some of the people, like Hilary Benn, he was in Belfast yesterday. He was doing very, very important business. We had the Jeffrey Donaldson trial. And I can go down that list of the...
Very convenient, very convenient.
He would have voted for it if he was in the Commons, because he's a member of the Cabinet that's come up with this ridiculous plan.
Hang on a second. I was on the front bench and we had the debate about the Gurkha passports, and I voted against my own government on that one because I felt that the Gurkhas should be given them.
Very noble.
But you weren't in the Cabinet.
Yeah. No, I was on the front bench.
Yeah, and you weren't a government minister.
Very noble.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Shadow minister.
And can I just point out something very quickly? £300 is what they're taking off the pensioners. Well, £300 is 1 day's pay for a train driver who gets £75,000 a year.
Yeah.
1 day's pay.
And considerably less than Labour peers get in the House of Lords for just clocking on.
316, isn't it?
360 now.
360 a day.
Is that going to be means tested, do you think?
The lovely Sam Francis is very patiently waiting for us. We're late for the news. Here he is. These two will be back in a bit.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom, 10:32 exactly. And as we were just hearing there, Labour is facing mounting pressure from within its own ranks to reverse cuts to the winter fuel payment after 50 of its own MPs abstained or were absent from yesterday's Commons vote. The policy, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment, has sparked backlash, with some Labour MPs warning they'll keep pushing for a U-turn. Charities and opposition parties say the cut could leave older people choosing between heating and eating this winter. But despite the opposition, the government insists the cuts are necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall. No-fault evictions could soon be history as the government prepares to ban Section 21 evictions. The Renters' Rights Bill, set to be introduced today, promises sweeping changes to protect England's 11 million renters. It will also force private landlords to take faster action on unsafe housing conditions. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner says the bill will overhaul renting and tackle what she's described as unfair practices. But landlords are warning the reforms must be fair to both sides. 11,000 patients are being traced and contacted after receiving incorrect blood test results. A testing issue at Luton and Dunstable University Hospital may have led to misdiagnoses of diabetes. The affected patients from Luton, South Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire will be invited for retests, and the Trust has apologised but is urging people not to call the hospital unless contacted directly. An investigation is underway to determine the cause. To Ukraine, where David Lammy and Anthony Blinken have arrived, calling it a critical moment in the war with Russia. The Foreign Secretary and US Secretary of State will meet with President Zelensky to discuss Kyiv's needs as it continues to fight against Moscow. Their joint visit follows reports that Joe Biden, US President, will lift a ban on British Storm Shadow missiles being used on Russian territory after Iran supplied ballistic missiles to Russia. In the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have clashed on crime, immigration, abortion and the economy in their first and possibly only presidential debate. The showdown last night began with a handshake but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked Trump's rallies, accusing him of boring his crowds. Trump, though, hit back, defending his popularity and attacking Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies.
She's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Later in the debate, Harris blamed Trump for nationwide abortion restrictions and the Capitol riot while questioning his fitness for office.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at 11 o'clock. Next, though, a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, as promised, here's a quick look at the markets for you this morning. The pound will buy you $1.3087 and €1.1849 euros. The price of gold is £1,929.27 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,196 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come, will a £500 million plan for the Port Talbot plant save British steel industry? Don't go anywhere. We're going to be discussing that. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. A cold wind for many of us through today, blustery showers across northwestern areas and a chance of frost overnight tonight. So quite a cold theme to come through the next few days. We've got Arctic air brought in by this northerly wind. The wind's going to be particularly strong across northern areas of Scotland. The strongest winds, though, have moved away overnight. We will see frequent showers, particularly across northwestern areas of England, northern Scotland, where we could see some snow showers over parts of the Grampians as well. And the strength of the breeze will make it feel colder than it is. So highs of around 12 or 13 degrees in the north, 15 or 16 in the south, but feeling closer to single figures exposed to that breeze. Showers will continue into this evening as well, particularly across northern areas of Scotland. They'll really rattle through and bring a risk of hail and possibly some thunder and lightning for some of us. And as well as across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, and after a pretty dry start to the day across eastern areas, we could see some showers across these areas into this evening as well. But it does look that much drier across more southern areas of England. But that will lead to clear skies quite widely overnight tonight. Still a few showers pushing in across parts of Wales, northern areas of Scotland in particular. But where we see the clearest skies and some slightly more sheltered valleys, we could see a touch of air or grass frost by Thursday morning. But widely, temperatures will be down in single figures. So certainly another chilly start to the day on Thursday morning. Probably a slightly colder start tomorrow compared to today. And this northerly wind will continue to bring showers in through Thursday, but there will be more in the way of sunshine to start the day, particularly across many eastern and southern areas of the UK. Cloud will thicken as the day goes on, and a few showers will continue to develop, particularly across parts of Wales, northern areas of Scotland. It will be a somewhat drier day for northwestern England, but again, another chilly one with temperatures well below average for the time of year. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M9 in Falkirk, there's a lane closed each way after an accident between junctions 4 and 3 between Polmont and Linlithgow. In South Ayrshire, the A77 is closed north of Care and Ryan after a vehicle caught fire with diversions by the A75 and A714. In Fermanagh, the A32 is closed along Forthill Street in Enniskillen because of a fire. A1 in West Yorkshire is blocked southbound by an accident between Darrington and Wentbridge, causing queues. Buses replaced trains between Southport and Wigan Walgate because of a points failure. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 6 towards Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham, causing delays. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, 2 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 12 and 13 towards Bedford, causing queues. And on the M4 in Swansea, the eastbound exit at junction 45 at Unners-Vorgan's closed because of an accident causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
10:40, this is Britain's Newsroom.
Well, the Labour government is working towards finalising a £500 million rescue package for Tata Steel Port Talbot plant in Wales.
Of course, this follows the closure of the steel company's blast furnaces, and around 2,800 jobs are expected to be cut.
And they're closing down the blast furnaces and replacing them with more environmentally friendly ones.
Of course,
3,000 jobs going as a result.
Well, the deals negotiated by the former government will enable this green shift that Andrew talks about for the steel company, including plans to replace coal-powered processes.
Let's get more on this from GB News reporter Jack Carson, who is in Port Talbot for us. Jack, morning to you.
Yeah, good morning to you both. So, according to reports, we are expecting the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, to make a statement after Prime Minister's questions today, outlining Labour's finalised deal with Tata Steel, of course, in order to help fund this electric arc furnace, which is what Tata Steel are trying to replace the 2 blast furnaces that they've got here at the Port Talbot Steelworks. Now, the first of those 2 blast furnaces here closed down in July. The second one is still running, but they want to have this package in place. It's a £1.25 billion pound package, believed to be able to implement this electric arc furnace. That's different to the way the current blast furnaces work. It uses scrap metal in order to melt and to power it. And so this is the £500 million agreement that we believe there's not much change on the money. We believe it's still going to be £500 million in this deal that Labour have negotiated. Of course, that was the figure that that the previous Conservative government had negotiated, but it's the difference on the redundancy terms, the retraining programmes that were still the final points that the Conservative Party and Tata Steel were still working on when it came to the last general election. In the aftermath of Labour's victory, Jonathan Reynolds said that a better deal was possible than the one negotiated by the previous government. As you were mentioning, the move to this electric arc furnace is going to have a huge impact here on the local economy, on local jobs. It's 2,800 jobs which are expected to be lost because this electric arc furnace needs a lot less staff in order to be able to work it and to have it up and running. Now, jobs will, of course, be created with the implementation of this electric arc furnace. It's understood to be able to have to take a numerous amount of years in order for it to be built, and jobs will be created. But the ultimate loss to the economy will be huge here with the amount of jobs that is going. But we are expecting that announcement from Jonathan Reynolds a little bit later today.
Thank you, Jack. We've been looking at home. Just thank you, Jack Carson there at Tata Steel Plant. We've been looking at what you've been saying at home. That's why we're a little distracted, because we like your comments coming in this morning. And Cynthia's pointing out that all the 5 Reform MPs voted with the Conservatives yesterday on the winter fuel payments. It isn't true that Nigel Farage abstained. I didn't think we said it was, did we?
No, well, we haven't said that on this programme.
No. Here we go. Ollie has said...
I think Richard Tye spoke in the debate, actually.
Yes, did he speak in the debate? Yes, I think he did, didn't he, yesterday? Edward said Starmer and Reeves don't or can't do empathy. Her interview with Chopper was very revealing. They are the new nasties. There is a sense, I think, that so many of these policies, they cannot claim them to be compassionate, nor caring, or kind, or in support of what would be the traditional Labour voter. Those images yesterday of the prisoners being released, we're going to play them to you in a little while as well during the show. I don't know how any politician or any Prime Minister thought that was going to land well. All these scallies coming out and popping champagne corks.
One of the people who got let out was banged up for shaking a 6-month-old child so severely the child is now paralysed and blind. How can that lout, cruel person be released early? If they felt it was so essential to get people out of prison because they're overcrowded, could they start with 11,000 foreign prisoners and kick a lot of them out and send them back to where they came from? That would do the trick.
That question was asked of Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, yesterday in the Commons, and she said, we are working on... In fact, that was Richard Tice asked that question yesterday, and she said, we are working on those sorts of deportations. That is happening anyway. It was a sort of slightly fluffy nonsense answer, to be honest. Get in touch with us this morning, won't you? gbnews.com/your say. It's not loading at the moment.
Coming up next, though, British missiles. Are they going to be used by Ukraine who would actually be able to fly them into Russia for the first time, which will be a major escalation of Britain's involvement in this war between Russia and Ukraine?
Because that's just what we want, isn't it? That is just what we want, is an escalation of this situation.
That's why David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is with Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, and Starmer is flying to America to see Joe Biden. Joe Biden may remember who he is, may not, I suppose, with his memory, because it will be Biden's decision and we will go along with it.
That's right.
Let the Americans decide.
Let us know your thoughts on that. We're going to take a quick break. Is it cup of tea time? Nearly.
Hope so.
Live across the UK.
And biscuit time. By the way, we've never thanked somebody for sending us a whole box of biscuits. Can we tell you, most of them were eaten by the producers, which is quite right.
Don't go anywhere. This is GB News.
Particularly one producer.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On Tuesday, the 3rd of September, at St Paul's Church in Wilton Place in London, a lucky few will sing highlights from Mozart's Don Giovanni in front of a paying audience with an orchestra and under the baton of Gary Matthewman, the conductor and artistic director of Brunswick Vocal Arts. Why is it important that young singers have this opportunity with an orchestra?
There's a gauntlet, if you like, that I think lots of young singers have to run between finishing the relative comfort of their conservatoire education and becoming firmly established as professional singers. Lots of the ones who show real verve and real promise and work really hard end up for a little bit too long being trapped in a kind of cycle of being the understudy, but some of them are ready to kind of go that extra mile and reach that next milestone. And we as a charity thought, well, what a lovely thing it would be to handpick some of these best young singers, give them intensive coaching on the role that they're going to perform, give them the chance to work with professional players for the first time, and crucially, have the thing professionally filmed and recorded. Because the first question all young singers are asked when they meet somebody influential now is, well, what's your website?
You have coached the singer, coaching the singer either towards a recital or towards their performance, their part in an opera. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It's a case of asking them questions which make them bring a character to life, so that when an audience member witnesses this person singing, they don't just think, oh, that's a pretty noise. They think, oh, there's something going on here that I recognise. And especially in a context like this, which is related, I think, to when people sing recitals. Say they sing 20 songs in that one evening, they've got to present 20 roles, 20 mini operatic roles, if you like. And we need to see the change in their bearing. We need to see the change in their approach to the text, as well as to the kind of the technical focus of their singing and how they produce sound.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
(10:49). This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So President Biden, yes, he is still president, is expected to lift the ban on British Storm missiles being sent from Ukraine into Russia.
It will be a major escalation, of course, and it comes as the US and UK have imposed fresh sanctions on Iran after they supplied ballistic missiles to Russia.
Foreign Secretary David Lammy and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken are due to discuss the matter today in Kiev. Go on.
No, so we're joined by the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. I'm just looking at the front page of the Times, Chip. Kiev to get go-ahead strike deep into Russia. It's not really a decision for us, is it? It will be if, because we understand Starmer's going to see Biden this week. If Biden says yes, do we all then follow suit? Or, and in fact, should we follow suit? Or is that then putting Britain at risk of retaliation by Russia?
Well, we don't have to follow Biden. That's a sovereign authority if you want to give the authority for Storm Shadow to be used, although it's not actually, because there are French components in that. So you'd need French authority. So if you were going to use British missiles into Russia, you would need French-British authority for Storm Shadow. We generally follow what the big brother across the Atlantic is going to do. In terms of escalation, this would be a geographic escalation, nothing more than that, because both the ATACMS, HIMARS and Storm Shadow have been used in the occupied Russian territory in Crimea. The reason it's being used there, of course, is because that is sovereign Ukrainian territory illegally occupied. It's worth saying that the general view at the moment is that Putin's most effective weapon is what the West's fear of escalation. And Lord Robertson, the former Defence Secretary for the Labour Party and NATO Secretary General, has quite clearly stated that Putin will only be forced to retreat from Ukraine by an absence of Western caution. So there is a view that this would help Ukraine. It's also worth saying, of course, that Ukraine have struck near Moscow in the last few days and on the 1st of September. That is with their indigenous systems. They don't necessarily need the British and European systems for this. Neither will it push back the aircraft which are launching the glide bombs and firing missiles all the way to NATO's border with Poland. 90% of Russian aircraft are beyond the range of ATACMS, HIMARS and Storm Shadow. What it would do is to help push the staging areas and supply depots of the Russians further back.
What do you see, Chip, as the outcome here? Because I don't hear any leaders around the world talk about peace. Actually, Donald Trump was the only person in the debate last night said he would like to bring this war to an end. All the Western leaders seem to talk only of escalation.
Well, if you go back to May last year, Donald Trump's talk of peace then was that he didn't think in terms of thought in terms of stopping the killing, and that's an honourable thing in terms of a humanitarian peace. The trouble with that approach is that it plays in Russia's favour in that it is a surrender peace, and it gives Russia the pieces of territory that they occupy at the moment. In terms of the peace, you can posit 6 different ways of doing this. You can have a frozen peace, and at the moment that's unlikely and is one of the reasons I think that Ukraine went into curse. If you had a frozen peace with the illegally occupied 4 oblasts, sort of states or counties equivalent, Russia would just say that we own them now. You can have land for peace, but that also means that you give away the sovereignty for Ukraine, which is theirs from 1991. A just peace would be Ukraine getting their borders back, as we sort of said we should do under the Budapest Memorandum of 1991, when we guaranteed with the US their sovereignty. Or you can have a Carthaginian peace, and the view of that is that only a defeated Russia will make the world a better place.
Which is most likely?
Well, I'd like to see a just peace and that Ukraine regains its 1991 boundaries. Negotiation is all about seeing what the left and right of arc are is going to be. I don't think we're anywhere near negotiations on the table at the moment. I think we'll need to see what happens, particularly in November in the American election. That may be a catalyst for something, but in the near term, I don't see any peace on the horizon.
OK, Chip, good to see you. Chip Chapman there, former...
everything could change if Trump wins, because he pointedly didn't say whether he wanted Ukraine to win. He just said he wants it to end.
And that's why I want Trump to win, because I do think he's got the best chance of coming to some sort of resolution in that region. Anyway, it's Back British Farming Day. Quite right, too. We need our farmers. They're very important. No farmers, no food. Discussing that in a minute.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It feels more like October or November out there today. A distinctly chilly winds. A few sunny spells, but also most places seeing plenty of showers. Here's the reason why. Low pressure sitting up to the northeast, and north or northwesterly winds bringing the air down, bringing that chill and bringing plenty of showers packing in over northwest England, extending down to the Midlands, north and west Wales, northern and western parts of Scotland. Parts of eastern England, southwest England and southeast Scotland may not see any showers, could stay largely dry and bright here, but elsewhere expect showers to come and go, and everywhere you can expect to feel the chill. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens at best. It feels even colder with that wind, which will be quite gusty, particularly close to the showers. A few are likely to filter down towards the southeast through this evening, and maybe the southwest as well, but lots of showers for Wales, northwest England, coming and going across Northern Ireland. Northeast England, southeast Scotland may well be mostly dry through the afternoon, but the showers continuing to come in across northern and western Scotland, where the winds are strongest. It really does feel chilly out here, and it's going to be a pretty cold evening and an even colder night. We'll continue to see some showers drifting in over north and west Wales, northwest England, but they should tend to ease across the Midlands. Showers keep going in northern Scotland, but many areas just becoming clear. The winds will ease a touch as well, and that will allow those temperatures to drop 5 or 6 degrees. That's towns and cities, many rural areas not far off freezing, in fact below across a good part of rural Scotland. So yes, a real chill for Thursday morning. Another day of sunshine and showers, but not as many showers. Still plenty for north and west Wales and northern Scotland, but a drier day for southwest Scotland, northwest England. And again, much of the east will be dry and fine. Chilly, but the winds won't be as strong tomorrow.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 o'clock on Wednesday, the 11th of September, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. So, sit down with Rachel Reeves. This morning, our political editor, Christopher Hope, quizzed Chancellor Rachel Reeves on the government's cuts to winter fuel payments.
This government faced a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, but we were determined to protect the poorest pensioners.
The first US presidential debate, it might be the last, because Donald Trump and Kamala Harris clashed in their first face-off. Most people seem to think victory for Harris.
And the future of firefighting. A group of students have been awarded this year's James Dyson Award for their design of Piri. It's a wildlife detection system aimed to help remote communities.
And back British Farming Day, yes, we're delighted to. Today's the annual day to support British food and farming, but what will this mean under Labour's first budget, as many farmers fear they may not survive potential changes to inheritance tax?
And of course, it is Wednesday, time for PMQs. Starmer will take on Sunak in the Commons. They've got a lot to talk about. We're going to be chatting to Christopher Hope and Gloria Di Piero ahead of GB News' PMQs show at 12. Get involved, gbnews.com/your say. We'll go and read your messages. Here's the news with Sam.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11 o'clock. The top story from the newsroom this morning. Labour is facing mounting pressure from within its own ranks to reverse cuts to the winter fuel payment after 50 of its own MPs abstained or were absent from yesterday's Commons vote. The policy, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment, has sparked backlash, with some Labour MPs warning they will keep pushing for a U-turn. Charities and opposition parties say the cut could leave older people choosing between heating and eating this winter. Well, despite the opposition, the government insists the cuts are necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall. No-fault evictions could soon be history as the government prepares to ban Section 21 evictions. The Renters' Rights Bill, set to be introduced today, promises sweeping changes to protect England's 11 million renters. It will also force private landlords to take faster action on unsafe housing conditions and to end blanket bans on tenants who receive benefits or who have children. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner says the bill will overhaul renting and tackle what she's described as unfair practices. But landlords warn the reforms must be fair to both sides. Well, we've heard this morning that 11,000 patients are being traced and contacted after receiving incorrect blood test results. A testing issue at Luton and Dunstable University Hospital may have led to misdiagnoses of diabetes. The affected patients from Luton, South Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire will be invited for retests, and the Trust has apologised, but is urging people not to call the hospital unless contacted directly. An investigation is now underway to determine the cause. Turning overseas, and David Lammy and Antony Blinken have arrived in Ukraine, calling it a critical moment in the war with Russia. The Foreign Secretary and the US Secretary of State will meet with President Zelensky to discuss Kyiv's needs in its ongoing fight against Moscow. Their joint visit follows reports that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is expected to lift a ban on British Storm Shadow missiles being used on Russian territory. That's after Iran supplied ballistic missiles to Russia. Well, in a crackdown on Russia's so-called shadow fleet, the UK has this morning sanctioned 10 vessels involved in dodging Western oil embargoes. David Lammy, Foreign Secretary, says that move blocks Russia's ability to trade in oil and that it sends a clear message to Moscow. The fleet is accused of using illicit methods to keep Russian oil flowing despite sanctions. That news just into us this morning in the last hour or so. Meanwhile, in the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have clashed on crime, immigration, abortion and the economy in the first and possibly only presidential debate. The showdown began last night with a handshake, but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked Trump's rallies, accusing him of boring his supporters. Trump, though, hit back, defending his popularity, and attacked Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies.
She's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Well, later in the debate, Harris blamed Trump for nationwide abortion restrictions and the Capitol riot and questioned Trump's fitness for office.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Well, some breaking news just coming to us from the Court of Appeal. 3 decades in the making, Oliver Campbell, a man with severe learning disabilities, has this morning had his wrongful murder conviction overturned. The 54-year-old spent 11 years behind bars for the 1991 killing of shopkeeper Baldev Hondal. Campbell's solicitor, Glyn Maddox, called him a lamb to the slaughter, saying officers had manipulated him during interrogations and then pressured him into confessing. After 33 years, his case has been described as one of the longest miscarriages of justice in British history. A mother who missed her son's court appearance to holiday in Ibiza will face a judge today. Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted to violent disorder in Manchester. He was in court for attacking a bus and vandalising a vape shop, crimes that were tied to unrest after a stabbing spree in Southport. The judge, who described the mother's absence as astonishing, has summoned her to explain her actions. And finally, what do you call a fish with a mirror? No, it's not a joke. It's called a blue streak, and the tiny tropical fish might just know what it's looking at. Scientists in Japan have found that the blue streak can recognise its reflection and even size itself up before deciding to pick a fight. In lab experiments, the swimmers checked their body in a mirror before going after smaller fish, and researchers think it could be a clue to how self-awareness evolved. The fish now join an elite club of animals alongside chimps, dolphins and elephants. You get all the fun facts here on GB News. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. We've had our tea and biscuits. Right, this is Britain. Yeah, put your biscuits out, Andrew. Well done. OK, overnight in the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris went head-to-head in their first presidential debate.
Here are some of the standout moments.
She has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country.
I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy.
These dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Well, there was a lot to digest here. No pun intended on the accusation people are eating cats. But the US political journalist Laurie Laird joins us now. Laurie, good morning.
Good morning to you both.
I actually think, given that Kamala Harris is largely known for talking a load of word salad, she often just says a lot of words that don't make any sort of sense. It looks from the clips that we've seen, and obviously we weren't up all night watching it, it looks like in terms of articulating some fairly credible responses, she did pretty well compared to him. What did you conclude?
Well, I did stay up, so if I look a little bleary, that's why. But I thought that you've nailed it there, Bev. She came up with some fantastic responses. She found his Achilles heel or heels. She went after him for people leaving his rallies. Now, you know he's obsessed with crowd sizes, right? From his first inauguration. So she went after that. People are leaving Donald Trump rallies because they're bored. That is something that will get to Donald Trump. So it feels like she worked very, very hard. Her team worked very hard to figure out Trump's vulnerabilities. But what I found very disappointing is there was no discussion of policy. I think we're getting a sense of how Kamala Harris is going to run this campaign. And she was slick, and she was self-assured, and she didn't take the bait. She managed to bait him. But what we don't have a sense of is how will she govern? She really slides out of any policy questions. And, you know, I'm going back and forth on this. Does it matter? It matters to me, but, you know, Hillary Clinton was a policy wonk, right? And that didn't help her get elected. Perhaps at this moment, American voters are more concerned about character than they are about policy.
Yeah, and that could be, Laurie, why she has avoided pretty much any for big set-piece interviews. She's done one, I think it was about 20, 25 minutes, but she hasn't sat down.
And it was pretty soft.
It was, but she hasn't done an hour. Perhaps if the polls stay like this, she doesn't need to and doesn't risk it. Boris Johnson here, for instance, avoided one or two big interrogations, and he won by a landslide.
You're absolutely right. And Boris Johnson was not someone who was known for his, you know, grasp or interest in policy details. So perhaps that isn't what American voters are looking for. Perhaps this election will be decided on character. It troubles me. And when Kamala Harris has articulated some policies, she did an economic speech about a month ago where she talked about price gouging and how she was going to prevent supermarkets from taking advantage of consumers. There's no evidence that that has been happening. I think that's her identifying that inflation is still an issue for most U.S. voters, but her remedy, there isn't really a remedy. A lot of the prices for goods and services are decided in an international level. May not be a lot she can do, but what she suggested was economically nonsensical. And I think that Donald Trump has a lot more leeway. We know him, right? He was elected in 2016 with the same sort of bombastic, articulations that we're seeing now. She has more to prove, and I would like to see her under a little bit more of an interrogation. I'd like to see her be forced to articulate how she will govern.
It was broadcast.
Sorry, these are long answers. I'm quite obsessed with this one.
Laurie, it was broadcast by ABC network. Lots of speculation on social media, lots of people having the opinion that the adjudicators were biased in favour of Kamala Harris and seemed to take some pleasure in fact-checking Donald Trump. Also, his now supporter, Bobby Kennedy Jr., had said afterwards that he was distressed by the amount of times that Donald Trump was fact-checked compared to Kamala Harris, particularly said in the first question where the adjudicators didn't pull Harris up on what might be opinion rather than fact.
I think you're right about that, and I certainly noticed that when I was watching, and I'm not quite sure how to best do this fact-checking, because Donald Trump tells a lot of lies, and if you fact-checked every bit of it, there wouldn't be much time for the candidates to speak. But certainly when Kamala Harris said, and it's a clip that you had just played, that Donald Trump left the economy in the worst shape since the Great Depression, joblessness, unemployment at the worst level since the Great Depression, that's not true. It simply is not true, and that should have been fact-checked. I do think that the Donald Trump, to my mind, told more untruths, but I think the moderators did give Harris a little bit easier of a time. And I think that things like what I just mentioned, this unemployment, they should have called her up on simply to preserve the appearance of fairness.
Laurie, bearing in mind the polls are very tight, that this is going to be significant for her, because there had been speculation that it could go horribly wrong because of her lack of experience. Trump has done this many times before.
Yeah, and we know what we're going to get from Trump. She certainly had more to prove. I think the Democrats should be concerned about the polling right now. Kamala Harris had a nice bump when she replaced Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, but there wasn't a convention bump. There wasn't a post-convention bump, despite the choreography of that Democratic convention. And she is getting an easy ride from the media. I mean, the coverage is gushing. Andrew, the interview that you mentioned with CNN with Dana Bash, really soft stuff, and she sat there with her running mate. So I would be, if I were, the Democratic Party should be very concerned that she is not in the lead. And I think we look at national polling, we got to forget about that. We got to look at the polling in swing states. This is where, because of the Electoral College, this is where it will be decided. And look at how both candidates have their feet stuck on the ground in the state of Pennsylvania. They both believe that this is where it's going to be won. And last night was, the debate was in fact, my hometown, the biggest city in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and they both plan to make many stops in that state.
Okay.
That's what they think is the battleground.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurie. Great to see you. Laurie Laird, the American political journalist, who's clearly had an excellent summer. What kind of tan did Laurie Laird have there? She's obviously enjoying herself this summer. Right, still to come, we're going to go through the stories with our panel, and we're going to show you those scenes from yesterday. I thought of you yesterday, Andrew. You were obviously down in Brighton when those pictures were coming in of the lags coming out of
Unbelievable.
prison as champagne, celebrating. Don't go anywhere.
The stage managing of it, extraordinary.
See you in a minute.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or GBNews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle is finding it very, very difficult to recruit staff for her lifestyle brand, which is called American Riviera Orchard. There's a mouthful for you. Apart from a jam gifted to influencers earlier this year, the brand is yet to launch any products.
Well, let's speak to our US royal and showbiz reporter, Kinsey Schofield. Good morning to you, Kinsey. Who's going to want that gig?
I mean, there are rumors that Netflix has said, allow us to manage the retail strategy. If she can't manage to find a CEO or somebody willing to work with her, Netflix sees an opportunity there.
To be an influencer, people have got to want to be like you. Do people like her?
I mean, this has been her biggest issue in the last few years, is realizing that there's been a shift when it comes to their popularity. Harry and Meghan believed their own hype when they said on that Netflix series that the reason they were ostracized was because they were much more popular than the British royals. They were more popular than Prince William, more popular than Princess Kate. And their popularity has declined immensely. And now they are desperate to win people over again.
Most people have to be liked or admired, and I put it to you, Kinsey, she'll have difficulty on both fronts.
Netflix is not going to renew this contract. I mean, they are fearful that this cooking show, this polo show, will not connect with the audience. And now they want us to believe that Meghan is at home cooking all this banana bread and having her best friend Chrissy Teigen over for scones. People aren't going to buy it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
11:19, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew and Bev. Stephen Pound is here, Mike Parry as well. We just want to reflect for a moment at some of the wonderful scenes of your new neighbours that came out of prison yesterday. Here we go.
Oh, no.
Happy to be out today? I'm happy to be out. Are you grateful to Keir Starmer for this release scheme?
No. Keir Starmer, I am, because I'm a big Labour...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Out with the old, in with the new. It's been too long anyway, I think. Yeah. Everyone's been happy today, I'm sure, coming out there, haven't they? And there's been a lot of happy people faces in the house, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you're grateful to Labour and you're grateful to the...
100%, yeah. I've Labour, I'm Labour, vote Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one. Did
they set it all out before you got out of prison when you was in there? Yeah. Oh, that's nice of Keir Starmer, isn't it? Sweet boys. He's the Prime Minister. Oh, he's the one that let you out. What? He's the one that got you out. Yeah.
Respect to him, man.
Yeah, man. Take it easy, boy. Nice.
This is Wandsworth Prison, if you're listening on the radio.
And there's they're waving champagne or pomade or whatever it is, celebrating. They are triumphalists, they're glorying in it. Mike Parry, look, there's a problem with the prisons. This is going to infuriate the public, and they can blame the Tories all they like for the prisons were full to bursting. Letting out 1,700 on the same day as the winter fuel allowance. Have they lost the plot completely, this government?
Unbelievable. And do you remember the original reason for this? We've got to let people out of prison, otherwise there'll be riots on the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, completely nonsensical view of doing it. There's now going to be more riots on the streets. Yeah. But let me tell you a story, because I'm from Stockbroker Belt, Surrey, OK? And there is a prison on the North Downs called Highdown, OK? Now, my landlord, one of my favourite pubs in Epsom. Epsom is a very nice town, you know, Epsom Spa and all that kind of stuff. A group of people came in at about midday, 12:30 yesterday. He thought he was welcoming a wedding party. He thought a load of people were getting together ahead of a wedding or something. They just got out of Highdown jail, and all their mates had come and picked them up and taken them to a very expensive pub in Epsom where they stayed for 3 or 4 hours. What is this country coming to? What is this country coming to?
Stephen Pound, ex-Labour MP, you had your head in your hands then, didn't you?
Well, I'm sorry, if you had to sit down and say, what is the worst possible look that we could come up with? It's some multiple tattooed, wife-beating yobbo being released from HMP Durham.
Saying I'm now a lifelong Labour voter.
Yes, and don't rub it in.
Keir Starmer is my hero. hero.
Will you please stop rubbing it in? Look, just a couple of things. First of all, anybody who's had more than a 4-year sentence wasn't being released. And the second thing is the Tories were doing exactly this, but they were doing it rather more sensibly and subtly. They were sneaking them out under the cover of darkness or on a Sunday morning.
A dozen here, a dozen there. Not 1,700 in one day.
Isn't that because they don't care? Isn't that because Labour seems to be acting with absolute impunity with anything? They just don't care what the public think. They're high on this majority. They're
unbelievable.
I really hope that isn't the case. I mean, I hope that it's more to do with, let's not be surreptitious, let's not be sneaky, let's actually be open about this. But however you cut it, some of those images, not just the Prosecco being sprayed all over this, somebody being picked up in a
Lamborghini. But I mean,
so crime pays.
Crime pays.
That's right. But Bevy's right.
Say crime doesn't pay, but
Bevy's right. It's almost as if the idea now is to flood society with undesirables, to dilute society.
So because they're going to vote Labour.
Absolutely. And did you know, by the way, you were talking about the way the Tories did it. The Tories sent 4,000 people back to foreign jails over the last 3 years, OK? They actually started doing something. We've got 10,000 people in this country who are foreign nationals, most of whom don't speak English. The Tories have been a good job getting them out quietly, and they get them out quietly because they don't want the people on the aeroplane suddenly stand up and demand, save this person, all that kind of stuff. I think it's absolutely outrageous, and there's absolutely no justification for it whatsoever. And sorry, just one last point. You said 4 years and all that, Stephen. Without a shadow of a doubt, some very dangerous people have got out because they've been measured only on the latest crime for which they were locked up, not for the 15 previous crimes.
I don't think that's accurate. I think
it is accurate.
But look, don't forget, we're deporting people to Albania and Romania, particularly, and also, oddly enough, to Vietnam. But I just find it amazing. Germany is now somehow deporting people to Afghanistan. Now, when we were told it was absolutely impossible. I appreciate that's another story. But with this particular thing, we were promised we'd have all these new prisons 10 years ago. The Tories are now saying that because of planning constraints, they couldn't do it. Well, I'm sorry, we've simply got to start building prisons. We've got just under 100,000 people in prisons in England and Wales, all of them overcrowded.
10,500 foreign prisoners, kick them all out now. The lot. Deport them out, prison crisis sorted.
Where to?
Send them back to their country.
We're deporting people to Jamaica, we're deporting people to Romania and to Albania.
Yeah, but that'll stop now. That will stop now, in my view, because they don't see that as a fair solution, to make prisons empty by sending people back to their country. They might get persecuted in their country. The fact that they've committed very serious crimes here doesn't seem to count.
I mean, if you knew Yvette Cooper, believe you me, she is no bleeding heart.
She's the Home Secretary.
I mean, she has got no worries at all about sending rapists back to Kingston, Jamaica.
Well, she's not doing very well, is she? How many people have crossed the channel since she became Home Secretary?
She also wanted a lot of people to go to prison for writing something mean on Twitter or Facebook in a moment.
Well, I think there's a case of a person, and we probably...
you'd be surprised. More than 900 people after those riots, weren't there? Some of them were just...
Well, you see, I mean, the police are talking in the paper today about a hate crime being somebody looking at someone in a funny way. I mean, that's another argument, another story. But believe you me, some of the people we're sending to prison, we shouldn't be sending to prison. Some of the people who go to prison should never, ever go anywhere where the sunlight doesn't come in stripes.
Sure. And some of those people shouldn't have been released, Stephen, because some of them, previous offences were domestic violence, and domestic violence offenders tend to re-offend.
Or violence against children.
They've been excluded.
There's one chap in particular who I think you've seen. Yeah, a child shook him so hard. He's
blinded and disabled.
Absolutely, and that guy's out now because they made the decision on what he was last sent to prison for, not historically what he was in prison for previously.
The parent of that infant is devastated.
Yeah.
Can we just quickly talk about the fact that gear change? Harry's Netflix documentary trailed Mike.
Unbelievably trite. I could not believe it. After we got that wonderful 3-minute video of Catherine being, celebrating a return to health, but at the same time a warning that cancer can come back any time.
We don't know if she's in the clear.
We don't know. You're never in the clear, I don't think. Do you know Jackie Beltreo, the sports reporter at Sky? 10 years after she first had cancer and got cured with it, she had another scare. You've got to be very aware of that. So I think Catherine got absolutely right. But what was so utterly trite about this very, uplifting and quite solemn production was a few hours later, Harry and Meghan think that they're as important to the world to let them know what their latest project is involving polo.
Well, their latest...
They can't help themselves, can they?
No!
But, I mean, I think we shouldn't let this pass without actually giving our best wishes to Kate Middleton, because she's been...
Of course.
I mean, she actually came to my local scout group in Northolt, the 12th Northolt, with no publicity, no fanfare, just sat there talking to the scouts, and she was absolutely... I appreciate she's a West London girl, so... You know, but she's absolutely great. But compare that with this nonsense with... I mean, I see Meghan is now losing enormous amount of money with her California jam product scheme.
Oh, right.
Nobody wants to buy it. I mean...
It's amazing, because I thought she was going to become a great feminist and champion of downtrodden women. How do you do that by making pots of jam?
I've no idea.
The WI have been doing that for years.
Well, they're a real feminist.
And doing it
I was very
well.
surprised she wasn't waiting while Kamala came off the stage last night, because that's the sort of... Yeah, exactly.
Take over the world,
exactly, yeah.
And Stephen Pound bought me a House of Lords apron last time he was in, and one day I will wear it on the show.
That is very sexist, because I have a House of Lords apron at home, so I could have done with a new one, Steve. Mine is purple.
I'm the only one who hasn't got one,
Right,
Stephen.
Thank you, the two Mr P's. Right, still to come, it's back British Farming Day, rightly so. But what will Labour's changes mean, particularly in regards to inheritance tax for farmers? Don't go anywhere, this is Britain's Newsroom.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It feels more like October or November out there today. A distinctly chilly winds. A few sunny spells, but also most places seeing plenty of showers. Here's the reason why. Low pressure sitting up to the northeast, and north or northwesterly winds bringing the air down, bringing that chill and bringing plenty of showers packing in over northwest England, extending down to the Midlands, north and west Wales, northern and western parts of Scotland. Parts of eastern England, southwest England and southeast Scotland may not see any showers, could stay largely dry and bright here, but elsewhere expect showers to come and go, and everywhere you can expect to feel the chill. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens at best. It feels even colder with that wind, which will be quite gusty, particularly close to the showers. A few are likely to filter down towards the southeast through this evening, and maybe the southwest as well, but lots of showers for Wales, northwest England, coming and going across Northern Ireland. Northeast England, southeast Scotland may well be mostly dry through the afternoon, but the showers continuing to come in across northern and western Scotland, where the winds are strongest. It really does feel chilly out here, and it's going to be a pretty cold evening and an even colder night. We'll continue to see some showers drifting in over north and west Wales, northwest England, but they should tend to ease across the Midlands. Showers keep going in northern Scotland, but many areas just becoming clear. The winds will ease a touch as well, and that will allow those temperatures to drop 5 or 6 degrees. That's towns and cities, many rural areas not far off freezing, in fact below across a good part of rural Scotland. So yes, a real chill for Thursday morning. Another day of sunshine and showers, but not as many showers. Still plenty for north and west Wales and northern Scotland, but a drier day for southwest Scotland, northwest England. And again, much of the east will be dry and fine. Chilly, but the winds won't be as strong tomorrow.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. Back to Andrew and Bev in just a moment. First, though, a look at the headlines this hour. Labour is facing mounting pressure from within its own ranks to reverse cuts to the winter fuel payment after 50 of its own MPs abstained or were absent from yesterday's Commons vote. The policy, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment, has sparked backlash, with some Labour MPs warning they'll keep pushing for a U-turn. Charities and opposition parties say the cut could leave older people choosing between heating and eating this winter. Well, this morning, our political editor Christopher Hope asked the Chancellor Rachel Reeves if the looming October budget could be more bad news for pensioners.
We've committed to those bus passes, to free TV licences for those entitled and free prescriptions. But we've also committed to the triple lock, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And that means that pensions will continue to rise by whichever is higher, 2.5% inflation or average earnings. That means that pensioners have £900 more this winter and likely another £460 from next April.
No-fault evictions could soon be history as the government prepares to ban Section 21 evictions. The Renters' Right Bill, set to be introduced today, promises sweeping changes to protect England's 11 million renters. It will also force private landlords to take further action on unsafe housing conditions. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, says the bill will overhaul renting and tackle unfair practices. But landlords are warning the reforms must be fair to both sides. 11,000 patients are being traced and contacted after receiving incorrect blood test results. A testing issue at Luton and Dunstable University Hospital may have led to misdiagnosis of diabetes. The affected patients from Luton, South Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire will be invited for tests. The Trust has apologised and urged people not to call the hospital unless they're contacted directly, while an investigation is underway. And Ukraine's Prime Minister has called on the UK for help and support using long-range missiles against Russian targets during a meeting with the Foreign Secretary today. David Lammy and the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will also meet with President Zelensky to discuss Kyiv's needs in its ongoing fight against Moscow. Their joint visit follows reports that US President Joe Biden will lift a ban on British Storm Shadow missiles being used on Russian territory after Iran supplied ballistic missiles to Russia. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, let's take a quick look at the markets for you at 11:30. The pound will buy you $1.3085 and €1.1852 euros. The price of gold, £1,927.29 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,204 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. So as Labour's first budget approaches, businesses across the country are fearful that those with the most assets will be hit hardest.
Now, let's think about farmers, because the average age of a farmer is 63, but many don't even achieve the minimum wage. And if death duties return to family businesses like farms for the first time, many may not survive, as our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, reports.
In a minute, let me just show you, before you play this video, we've been sent this. I'd like to say I got you a present, Andrew, but I haven't.
Well, that'll be a first.
It's from the National Farmers Union, and look at this, it's wonderful. They've sent us some fantastic British produce here. There is some brilliant Snowdonia cheese, black bomber, love that. Some tea, we like that, don't we?
What she doesn't realise, Bev, is we're going to share this with the staff. It's not all for her. Have her name on it.
These are my favourite sourdough crackers and some wonderful British-made strawberry jam. So you watch this video from Dougie Beattie and we'll have a little snack, shall we?
I think we might.
Sam Hanna is a third-generation farmer who will eventually take over the business. But to stay competitive, he has had to put in substantial investment.
Milk and parlour, buildings and all would have been 300 to 350,000. We've invested, had a loan for 100,000 on it to try to improve the farm, make it more economic and more beneficial towards us going forward. We already pay our income tax each year, and our assets are also included in our income tax each year. So if we have more assets or more stock or more machinery, it's all taken into our tax bill. So if we're going on till an inheritance tax or go in that direction, why should we be paying tax on stuff that's already been taxed every year.
In 1974, Harold Wilson scraped into power. He immediately settled with the unions, but to pay the bill, he introduced the capital transfer tax, designed to tax those with assets. Family businesses and farms were hit the hardest, and this drove up the price of food and hampered economic growth. In 1986, Thatcher's government reversed the policy. But if it returns, who will benefit the most?
If you find that small farms and farmers are going to have to sell off land, who's going to buy it? The people who want to be virtuous and say we're offsetting our carbon output by having trees planted on ground or buying land or whatever. It's big companies who are going to do that. Odd that a Labour government that says it wants to curtail big business and the worst aspects of big business could actually be, through its tax policy, the government that enhances the power of big business.
Many farmers get less than the minimum wage, and the return of death duties could be the final blow for these farming families.
If we had to pay an inheritance tax at the end, it would cripple it. It would. The money isn't there to do it. As I say, we're asset rich, cash poor, and if you take them assets away, you have no farm at the end of it.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, County Down.
Save our farmers. We have to.
We do.
I've been testing Andrew on his sheep and
I have a terrible
cow
admission.
knowledge. I recognise a few of these because I've been to the big sheep down in North Devon. I've sat there with the kids having been educated. And what did you say when I said...
I have to confess, I said they're all lamb chops to me.
But that's OK for the farmers. We need
British
lamb chops.
lamb.
British lamb.
Oh, and a leg of lamb is my favourite.
British beef.
Yeah.
So
although when I see baby lambs, I do think...
As opposed to the adult lambs?
Yeah, funny that. The baby lambs, because they... Well, yeah, but
Buy
no.
British. I keep
agree.
now, every time in the supermarket.
Look for the label.
Buy British, support our farmers. They need us. They really do.
They really do.
Right, still to come. You will never guess how many wildfires we have in the UK. We're going to be talking in a minute to a group of British students who've been awarded for a design of a product that will detect them. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
70% of population will make a judgment on someone just by looking at them. And within 2-3 seconds, we make a decision if we like someone or not.
Really? Is it that quick?
So it's actually very, very fast. So before we have a chance to kind of express what we want to say, our subconscious mind is kind of looking for clues. So you look at someone and you look at their, for example, I don't know, the watch they're wearing, maybe the makeup. I spent literally my whole childhood learning, being absolutely mesmerized by my mom's ability to choose different style of clothing for different style personalities. British definitely take a pride in their appearance. They do spend time to look good. There is a lot of amazing British designers. For me, it was always about that feeling that I've learned from my mom's shop, how the people were living, buying certain things. And I was like, oh my God, they look happy. They've got this big smile on their face. My main objective always was to make people feel good. So now as a stylist, I help them to go through style therapy. I help them to discover colors that are good for their colors that they wear them close to their face, but also it sets the tone for their wardrobe. And then we look at the outfit formula. So it's, yeah. When I look at Ellie's dress sense, I was just thinking, okay, she likes to be polished.
I do like to be polished.
Exactly. Elegant. Timeless. I look at the reference to the dress you're wearing today. It's that kind of Chanel black and white, timeless, never go out of fashion. So for me, it's it's not the trends, but how you would like your personal style to be and how timeless it can be.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Karina Gunadi.
Okay, right.
Richard Alexandra and Karina Gunadi, who were just telling us how to pronounce their names, are in the studio.
They have won a very important award from the very famous entrepreneur Sir James Dyson. It's all to do with detecting wildfires. Shocked to me that there are up to 9,000 in 3 years in this country. That'd be about right. So what put you onto it, and what does your system do?
Well, so we've been seeing what is happening in Brazil right now with wildfires growing so much and so fast. And then we start to realize that wildfires actually until the end of the century is going to be very big on tropical forests in the Arctic Circle. So by understanding this, we start to think, okay, how we can help remote communities to have an affordable solution for detecting wildfire early to make it controllable.
And what is it, Karina? What have you made?
Yes, so PIRI is an early wildfire detection system, and what sets it apart from everything else is that it's bio-inspired and bio-based. And so the goal is to create something that is affordable, accessible, but also sustainable. We're trying to protect the forest, we might as well not continue to pollute it as well.
And so what actually is it? How does it detect heat, smoke? Is it Wi-Fi connected? Does it send a signal to somebody?
Okay, so I can show you. This is our model.
No.
Oh, look how small that is.
That looks like a rock. You might just kick that around the forest floor. It's
Or a
actually
doorstop.
quite like an acorn, actually.
Yeah.
Yep, so we were inspired by pine cones, and the way pine cones release their seeds is they've adapted to their fire-prone environments. And what happens is a resin is closing a seed case. That resin melts when a fire happens, releasing its seeds. And so inside of our PyriPod, there's something that melts, and when it melts, it sends a signal out.
Good
and that's
Lord.
how you locate it.
Now, you're from Imperial College, great science base, and the other college?
Royal College of Art.
So this is a great combination, science and art.
Yeah.
So it's important because then we can connect not just creating innovative solutions, but understanding the human context and how the system that we're going to need to implement it together. So art and design.
So how many of these would you need to put in a forest to detect the wildfire?
We're working on that right now. We're trying to work towards a field test to exactly determine that number, but what we can say is that the coverage you need per kilometer squared is really, really affordable. We think a lot cheaper than the competitors.
And who owns the patent, importantly? Who's the patent owner? Hopefully you two.
Us.
Yes.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Mr. Dyson.
That's very good. And so how much would it cost, do you think, roughly, approximately, to protect perhaps the Forest of Dean?
Yeah, so we're still working on it, but all the materials inside of it, like I said, are abundant and affordable. These are things like wax and charcoal, so they're really, really cheap. So we're seeing something where each unit, for example, is probably going to be less than 10 pounds.
Gosh.
That's superb. And will you supply these presumably to governments? I mean, they're your best customers. This is literally the best business model ever, isn't it? It's affordable, we need it, and the government will buy it.
And by the way, where do we invest?
Suddenly got taken a bit of a dragon's den turn here, hasn't it?
Exactly.
But what does happen next in terms of development of the product for you?
So the next year is we're going for the field test. So now we're going to crunch all these numbers to guarantee that it works in the environment and how much it's going to cost and the manufacturability. And then we are planning for having the pilots with national parks in 2 years. So.
And how do they detect the fires now, or don't they?
Well, it's quite a big challenge today because the solutions that we have, like satellites, it only works when the fire is already too big and mostly uncontrollable most of the times. So today there isn't like a very affordable system for remote communities or big national parks.
Tell me about the competition. How many other competitors were there, and what is the prize for the Dyson Award?
We actually don't know how many competitors there were, but for winning the UK National Award, which is what we won today, it's £5,000.
And what can you spend that on yourself, on a nice holiday, or does it have to be ploughed into the product?
I think there's no strings attached.
Oh, have a holiday.
It's, well...
Sure, go on.
She's a businesswoman,
Yeah. You need a holiday because you've got a big stressful period ahead developing the product.
Exactly. Actually, we need to protect those national parks for having holiday in the future, so the money is going everything for Pyre right now.
Right.
And are you looking for investors? Is that the next stage in terms of the testing, and then you look for somebody to help you fund it?
That's correct. So we are looking for investors right now to guarantee that we can make it up.
So what is that programme? Dragon's Den? Are you is next stop Dragon's Den?
They're not going to need. You're not going to need it, are you? People are going to be queuing up to help.
James Dyson is an extraordinary figure, controversial in many ways, but a great inventor. Have you met him, or will you get to meet him?
Not yet. So we are working very closely with the James Dyson Award, the James Dyson Foundation, that are being very kind to help us understand how we can bring Pyre up.
Yeah.
So we are very happy for this award.
Well, he's probably one of our greatest entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. What's your background, both of you? Where are you both from originally, and how long have you been studying in this country?
So our program was the past 2 years, but before that I was in San Francisco. And my background is mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So my background is design strategy. Before coming here, I was living in the Americas, a few countries there. And yeah, so we've been here for the past 2 years.
So when you finish your studies, is this going to be a British-based business? You're going to build it here? You're not going to take it back to America?
Oh.
We want you to come back.
We're staying here. We're staying here. But we also
so
probably are going to see, since it's such a global problem, where else we will open. But definitely in London.
Similar out there at the moment?
No.
And where did the idea originally come from? What was the germ of it for you?
I think we had two tracks. The first one, really understanding how these unprepared communities going to need some affordable solutions. And then it started there, understanding the materials, how we could bring the price lower for preparing them. And then we started to look on nature and how pine cones work, how nature deals with fire. And then that was actually our big inspiration.
And never a shortage of pine cones.
Yeah, and it's so interesting here because you've also raised awareness of the fact that we have fires in this country that we weren't aware of.
Well, if we had a guess, I was asked by one of the producers, how many do you think? I said 30.
Yeah, I said maybe 100 wildfires every year.
But 9,000? Staggering. And that number's going up, presumably, climate change, and also people are careless.
Exactly. It's a global problem. We are talking about tropical forests all over the world. We are talking about Arctic Circle forests that nobody guessed that could have a lot of wildfires. We are seeing Brazil now, an area that's 3 times the size of London, being completely destroyed in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So it's a big problem.
Well, look, congratulations. You are the award-winning team, Richard Alexandra and Karina Ganandi, and we hope the product stays in Britain and becomes a great British success. And I want your number so I can invest in it.
Yeah.
From little acorns, if you pardon the pun, oak trees grow.
Lovely. Thank you so much for coming in, guys. Right, still to come, so Keir Starmer takes on Rishi Sunak at PMQs at midday. You can hear the questions that we would ask him in just a minute. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It feels more like October or November out there today. A distinctly chilly winds. A few sunny spells, but also most places seeing plenty of showers. Here's the reason why. Low pressure sitting up to the northeast and north or northwesterly winds bringing the air down, bringing that chill and bringing plenty of showers packing in over northwest England, extending down to the Midlands, north and west Wales, northern and western parts of Scotland. Parts of eastern England, southwest England and southeast Scotland may not see any showers, could stay largely dry and bright here, but elsewhere expect showers to come and go, and everywhere you can expect to feel the chill. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens at best. It feels even colder with that wind, which will be quite gusty, particularly close to the showers. A few are likely to filter down towards the southeast through this evening and maybe the southwest as well, but lots of showers for Wales, northwest England, coming and going across Northern Ireland. Northeast England, southeast Scotland may well be mostly dry through the afternoon, but the showers continuing to come in across northern and western Scotland, where the winds are strongest. It really does feel chilly out here, and it's going to be a pretty cold evening and an even colder night. We'll continue to see some showers drifting in over north and west Wales, northwest England, but they should tend to ease across the Midlands. Showers keep going in northern Scotland, but many areas just becoming clear. The winds will ease a touch as well, and that will allow those temperatures to drop 5 or 6 degrees. That's towns and cities, many rural areas not far off freezing, in fact below across a good part of rural Scotland. So yes, a real chill for Thursday morning. Another day of sunshine and showers, but not as many showers. Still plenty for north and west Wales and northern Scotland, but a drier day for southwest Scotland, northwest England. And again, much of the east will be dry and fine. Chilly, but the winds won't be as strong tomorrow.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we're going now to Gloria Di Piero and Chris Hope for PMQs Live.
And it is so good to be sat back with you, Christopher
Great
Hope,
to be
for
here,
a new
Gloria.
session,
Yes.
new government. It's all exciting, but not about us, because we want to know what would our viewers and listeners be asking the Prime Minister today, or indeed the Leader of the Opposition. It's not about our questions, it's about what you think at home, so get sending them in.
Please send us your questions, tell us who you are and, as importantly, where you're from. We'll put your questions to our panel, gbnews.com/yoursay. PMQs Live is all about you, and particularly right now about you, Bev and Andrew. Briefly, what would you both ask the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer?
Go on, you go first.
I would ask the Prime Minister, does he still agree with the Labour Party research in 2017 which suggested scrapping the winter fuel allowance would cause the premature death of 4,000 pensioners?
Wow. And I would probably ask him, was he also popping champagne corks like those released prisoners yesterday at the pictures that we all saw all over the media, which were deeply shocking?
Those are the two issues of the week, Andrew and Bev, correct. And let's see what the PM says to that at PMQs. Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Bev. It's fast approaching midday here in Westminster.
Yes, this is GB News, Britain's news channel. PMQs Live starts right now. The time is 11:57. It is Wednesday, the 11th of September. This is PMQ's Live on GB News with Gloria Di Piero and Christopher Hope.
In just one moment, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and Rishi Sunak, the leader of the opposition, go head-to-head at Prime Minister's questions, the last one before the party conference season. We'll have full coverage of every spit and cough, every moment of drama, and we're getting full reaction from Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, and Shadow Exchequer to the Treasury, Gareth Davies.
And I'm going to start with our Conservative spokesperson, after saying welcome to you both, obviously. Can I ask you, if you were holding the Prime Minister to account today on behalf of the Conservative Party, what would you want to know? What would you ask him?
Well, we'd be doing it on behalf of the country and the electorate, and quite frankly, there's quite a lot to go on. We could ask him about the £300 commitment before the election to cut everybody's energy bills, where that's at when energy bills are now going up by 10%. But I think the only game in town this week is, of course, winter fuel payments. There are literally millions of people across the country